to the weird and the wonderful with Strange Bones. That's me. I hope everybody is having an absolutely wonderful evening. Once again, the weather has gone completely bonkers. It's somewhere between hot, cold, rainy and dry, and can't seem to decide which way it's going at all. But Spooky has arrived. Hello, sir. Are you in fine and fabulous form? And 22 has joined. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope everybody is doing really, really well. There you are, sir.
You can hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
Awesome. What great things have you got to tell me?
Well, don't you have a topic?
I do have a topic, and it turned out to be a rather good one.
Okay.
And over the years and over the times, we've been fairly serious in our topics, which has been interesting. Don't get me wrong; it's been good. But how can I say this? It's been all fairly heavy stuff. I think you will agree. And I thought, you know what? What are the weirdest inventions we've ever had? Not just the serious or important ones, but including the ones that you're just like, what the hell were you thinking? So I compiled us a list, which I think is not a bad list at all. And some of them are pretty good. They're okay. They're all right. And some of them are just, really? So yeah, can humans manipulate and write DNA to create stronger or new types of creatures? That is a very interesting question, Spooky. Do you know, I don't actually know if they can yet. However, I strongly suspect that what holds us back is the management of the massive amounts of data.
So with AI,
correct.
In the future, it will be very possible to do so.
That is the case. However, I am going to bring up let's be fair, it's our standard rule of humanity now. Having gone through so many of our lives, I think you will agree that our standard rule of humanity is that 99% of people are probably going to be very sensible about something like that. However, the 1%. And what will they do? Yeah.
They're going to say it's unethical.
No, they're probably going to be the ones that are going to go, well, if I can make a change to the DNA, I want human beings to have cat ears and tails, or I want human beings to have wings. You know they will.
Why not? If you can, then why not?
Well, I can think of several reasons, starting with you just know that when people start doing things like that, it almost always goes south fast.
As long as they don't bother other people, it's fine. They can walk around with their own cat ears or tails or whatever they want.
Well, my concern is, what about the unforeseen side effects?
Like they become feral or they become wild animals.
Pretty much, yeah. Because so many of these things do seem to go that way, don't they?
Well,
Oh, I was going to ask you, by the way, before we get started with our topic for tonight. Somebody very, very kindly gifted me a brand new computer and everything, all the bells and whistles. And hopefully in the future, if I can get myself a small webcam, I will be able to do this live, not on my little screen, but on something rather larger and betterer. However, for some strange reason, you plug in the mouse and keyboard and the computer simply ignores their existence. Why would that be?
check the USB port. Is the USB port plugged into the motherboard?
I didn't know that that could be a thing. Right there, you've got a point.
Yeah.
I will be doing that tomorrow morning. Because, yeah, no, I mean, it's a lovely computer. It really is nice, starts well. It's got nothing on it, so much happiness. I can start. And, of course, my poor laptop that I work with is in dire need of a complete formatting and cleanup after many years of messing around.
Where
So,
did you plug the mouse and keyboard in? At the back or?
at the back, at the front, all of the different ones.
Okay, if it was in the back, then it would most likely be straight into the motherboard.
Okay. But obviously it was transported unto me, so chip shift and goodness knows what.
Okay.
So I'll have a good look for that tomorrow, because, yeah, I was all excited. I thought I'd do it tonight on a brand new setup, and no, you won't. Nevertheless,
Yeah.
so let's start off in the proper manner, as we always do, and point out to all of you wonderful peoples, welcome, welcome. It is fantastic to have you on board. Remember that this channel is entirely for our interest, amusement, and the examination of the weird and the wonderful. And as such, we promote nothing, but we also denigrate or deride nothing. And as such, we have only one rule, which is don't be rude. If you are rude, we give you the boot. Because we are here for everybody's enjoyment and amusement, and not to get at anybody. And there's lots of people with lots of different views and beliefs and whatever. So that said, however, you are utterly welcome to have your own opinions, and you can agree or disagree. And you are welcome to comment so in the comments, and are indeed encouraged to do so. However, do it in a manner polite. And that is perfectly, I believe, possible. That said, do comment. Comment lots. Give your opinions, give your experiences, all the rest. Like, share, subscribe, do all of those good things, because this channel, it don't go without you. So, that said, let's get started with some of the strangest inventions ever. And the first one, speaking of cat ears, was in fact a rather interesting device that I think, Spooky, you will enjoy the concept of. While the invention itself is somewhat dubious in and of itself, there are other applications, maybe. So 2011, they came up with a new device that combined Japanese technology expertise with, yes, a fascination for being a furry. And the result was a device called a Nekomini, where cat ears are controlled by the user's brain waves. So when the user concentrates, okay, imagine, if you will, you know what an Alice band is. Girls wear them to keep their hair in place. Well, imagine an Alice band with sensors that touch over your temples, and then cat ears. But here's the interesting thing. okay, the ears respond to your brain waves. So when you focus, the ears perk up, but when you go into a relaxed state, they droop.
Okay. So it's not the device that I saw recently. Somebody had this little device that he just puts onto his ear, and he was able to um, communicate and receive information as well. And he was Googling in real time answers.
That's clever. Now,
Yeah.
okay, here's the thing. It is a silly invention that I'm talking about. However, if you think about it, if you can do cat ears that respond to your brain waves, if you can start to refine that, what other things could you use? Now, imagine, for example, Stephen Hawkins, quadriplegic, can barely move. If you could develop a way that you can manage a mouse just by brainwaves, how much better would it be for a quadriplegic?
Yeah. Well, you've got Neuralink. It's still under development, but there's 12 people that's already got a Neuro chip installed, and they can use their computer mouse and some keyboard features. They all are still training, and it's also learning their brain, and they're learning how to control it. And this one guy, he's so sick he can't even talk. But now with the Neuro chip, you can talk through a computer very fluently.
You see, so while I personally am like, yeah, I'm never going to get a chip stuck in my head, number one, for somebody like
Maybe
that,
if you were sick like those guys,
exactly, that's a serious medical use that is valuable. Secondly,
yeah,
this one doesn't require anything but a little electronic pad, so you can take it off, which means you could literally have it on or off at your leisure. So
yeah,
when you're working, you wear it, and when you're not, you take it off. So it doesn't require a surgical implant, which might be even better.
yes, because then you can sleep in peace.
Right. So in essence, it's a kind of a dumb invention. But if you think about it, the possible applications of it being successful are really, really interesting. So it could go a lot further. By the way, hey there to Hamza. I see you joined in. Welcome, welcome. And we got FT Spam that joined on as well. So awesome, awesome. But yeah, so weird as an invention, but at the same time, not bad. Not bad, possibly. Now, you can actually buy this one. It's still available. It will cost you, however, £90. Yeah, not something I'm going to spend on perky ears, sorry.
Yeah, it's too expensive for something that doesn't do a lot.
Right? I mean, right off there, I'm like, yeah, but nah. That said, I'm just going on to the next one, if it allows me. There we go. The next one is called the Dynasphere. Now, if you're wondering what that is, it's a mono-wheeled motorbike. Now, it sounds good, okay? It's petrol driven. It's got one wheel. You're sitting inside the wheel, okay? It was tested in 1932 in England, and it seemed like a pretty cool idea. It could get up to 48 kilometers an hour and had a petrol engine. And yeah, there's a certain amount of interestingness to this, except, number one, not practical because it was 3 meters high. Also, difficult to steer because you're inside the wheel and can't see where the hell you're going properly. So, bit of a problem. Hey, Simpson. Along with that, difficult to control, which, as you can imagine, adds to the problem. And then something that you will never have experienced driving a car, it was prone to gerbling, where any kind of hard braking or acceleration resulted in the driver being spun around inside the wheel like a gerbil getting caught in its wheel. So, a great idea in theory, but in practice, an absolute death trap. So, yeah, not a good plan on a fast-moving motorbike. But there you go. Nevertheless, it was an invention. And interesting that it came out way back in the 1930s. So, kudos for that. Now, the next one is one of those inventions that we're going to call just why? Like, just why? A specialist robot that you wear that feeds you tomatoes. Why? Like, really? Nevertheless, apparently this was something designed by a Japanese juice maker called Kagome as a means to eat tomatoes while running a marathon. The prototype was built for promotional purposes, though, and you can still buy it. Why? I don't know. I'm just going to stay with that. Now, the next invention is one that, I'm sorry, it is utterly useless. There is completely no need for it, and I want them. I really, really want them. In the 1960s, the company Goodyear, famous for its tires, brilliant tires, they had an idea. What about if you had tires that would light up? So,
Light up, like on fire.
no, they were made from synthetic rubber with light bulbs mounted inside the wheel that lit them up so the whole tire glows brightly.
That's fancy.
Right? There's a whole range of colors. They'd look amazing in the dark.
It's probably dangerous.
No, the problem was that they didn't work so well in the wet, and they had a tendency to melt under heavy braking. Not ideal for safety. But come on, I reckon we could somehow get that fixed in some way. Because wouldn't you want glow-in-the-dark tires?
You can probably customize one for yourself.
Right?
I think the cops would probably pull you off,
Well,
ask you what's going on here.
They would know where to find you. But be honest, Bookie, you want the sum, don't you?
Well, what's the use cases for it other than looking pretty?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But come on.
It's going to cause distractions on the road.
Yeah, I know. And I can think of many reasons why it would be a bad idea. But I still would like. Oh dear. Thank you to Mo123 Ali for the likes there. Thanks, of course, as well to you, Spooky, for the likes there. I do appreciate greatly. This next invention is one that, I'm sorry, while it may have been invented for one thing, it caused me a huge amount of laughter and several probably unsafe for TikTok comments about who we should give them to. So this is called the hay fever hat, and it is a head mounted device from a chap by the name of Kenji Kawakami, who's made so many weird inventions that he's even coined the word chindogu, which is now the Japanese word for weird and pointless inventions. So he even invented the word for the kind of things he invents. He's invented hundreds of bizarre and absurd items, such as mini umbrellas for your shoes, eye drop funnels, and Swiss Army gloves. But this one is essentially a hat with a mounted toilet roll. And I so badly want to say so many things about who it would be good for, but it wouldn't be good on TikTok, and I think we are all aware of that. And I'm pretty sure you can think of all of the people that I would give this to. So there you go. Now, a next one, which was meant to be a lot more serious, are bed glasses, also known as the Hamlin reading glasses, which were designed to enable a user to lie flat on their back and read a book which they held upright on their chest. So it's a system of mirrors like a periscope, so you can read at a 45-degree angle. Why? Yeah.
I just looked at some EEG headphones. It's
Oh yeah.
yeah. Do you know what EEG stands for?
Something encephalocardiogram.
Yes.
A medical thing for checking out your brain, essentially.
Yes. So it reads your brain.
Yes. Usually a very, very large, bulky, and expensive piece of equipment.
Well, this one is tiny.
Which sounds pretty damn good.
Well, the price is a little bit too expensive. It's $400.
That's not bad. And
Yeah.
how successfully does it work?
Well, it can't manipulate your brain waves.
No, but I'm thinking in terms of medical.
Well, it reads a couple of things. It records brain electrical activity, primarily to diagnose and monitor neurological conditions like epilepsy and seizures, but also helps with sleeping disorders, brain tumors, head injuries, strokes, effects, and assessing brain function in commotional brain dead patients. Okay.
Okay, now here's the thing, okay? Huge thanks to Gavin Johns there. Welcome, welcome. Mhlongo, welcome, welcome. I just want to point out that if you go and get an MRI or one of these in-depth scans, it costs a freaking fortune to do it, okay? And in many ways, you want to reserve those ones for the serious cases. True. But if this ECG works and it's $400, for minor patients where you're needing to monitor, I'm 100% behind the idea of it. If it works, come on, why not? Light, mobile, does the job. Right there. That's brilliant. That's an amazing idea. And
Yeah.
cheap.
So it's 6,700 rand, and you keep the device.
For a medical clinic, I see zero reason not to have something like that if it does what it says. I mean, right there, come on. Amazing.
Well, it's on a holiday special now.
Oh, there you go. Don't tell me it's from Temu.
No, it's
Oh, thank
straight
goodness.
from the developer's website.
Okay, no. For a moment I was worried there.
Yeah.
But do you know what? I remember reading a
It's
very...
legit. I got the details from Gemini, so it won't be a scam or anything.
Okay. I was told a very interesting thing by a paramedic. Now, do you know what a fortune-telling fish is? Okay, so
No.
essentially you get them in Christmas crackers, and it's a little fish-shaped piece of cellophane, and you put it on your palm, and it will curl in different ways dependent on your body heat. Okay. Now, they're obviously a complete load of rubbish. It doesn't fortune tell anything. But a paramedic told me that if you understand how they react to your body properly, you can put them on someone's hand who you're worried about might break a fever, and if they do, they will curl in a certain way. So you can see when the fever's starting even before it's normally detectable, and without needing any fancy equipment to detect. So if I'm concerned, and I mean, they cost like 5 cents to make. They're literally, it's a piece of cellophane. It's actually a usable early warning system just to keep an eye on an unconscious patient. You drop it on their skin and it will curl in a certain way if they're about to spike a fever. So sometimes the cheap and the silly is actually incredibly useful. Just saying. Which is pretty awesome if you think about it. But,
Okay. Do you trust it?
well, no, but his point was it gives you an indication of change. And because it costs like 5 cents, it's no issue. And if you see that, you can immediately then know to give the patient a proper test to make sure they're all right. So
Okay. Does it depend on luck?
no, it depends on body heat, which is why it's
Okay.
useful, because it reacts physiologically.
Okay.
And it just so happens that if your temperature spikes in a certain way, it will curl in a certain way.
Yeah.
And it's a quick way of going, because you can't tell unless you're constantly checking. And if you're busy and you can't. You just leave it there, and if you see it suddenly goes into a spiral or whatever it was, they can then go, hey, all right, and give you a proper test and say, okay, yeah, no, we are or we're not. So that's the ECG device, is that right?
Yes.
It
It's a
looks,
tiny little thing. It just goes around plugs on both of your ears.
yes. Well,
Yeah, and reads your brain.
interesting that, because your oral canals are very sensitive and react very quickly to changes in the body. So that sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
I like that idea. Okay. I am impressed. And hopefully it will actually become used, because that would be good. Well,
Well, it's cheap enough for everyone to have one.
this is what I'm thinking.
What
I
per
mean,
household?
for if you okay, I wouldn't buy it myself, because why would I? But say I live in a house with somebody who has cerebral palsy or is quadriplegic or something, and I've got to look after them. Something like that would be of great use to make sure that they're not going into some kind of stress. I mean, it would be very useful.
Yeah, I would buy it and then program it
Okay.
for apps, for applications. So
Like
I can
what?
use, well, just to control my computer or my phone using brainwaves.
That would be cool. That would be very cool.
Yeah, then I just send signals to it using my brain and, yeah, do whatever I want to do hands free.
Now, you know where I'm thinking that would be freaking awesome? Given the speed of thought, imagine that in something like Call of Duty.
Yeah,
And if you could,
you'll have instant reaction.
yes. Furthermore, imagine something like that whereby a surgeon wears it, but the actual cutting and everything is done robotically in a totally sterile environment. And he's just watching and thinking of what to do, and the robots do what he's thinking.
Yeah,
I mean, there are times where the biggest danger in a surgery is the possibility of infection crossing over, either from the patient to people operating on them, or from the people operating on to the patient, etc., etc. If you were in that state, and I could put you in an utterly sterile environment and not even be in with you, I mean, the advantages. Furthermore, imagine the advantages to then sending a robot to the moon to walk around, and you're sitting at home with that on, giving it instructions: pick up that rock, move over there, avoid that obstacle.
you'll just be buffering the whole time.
Well, yes, possibly, but things are getting better.
Yeah, but the fastest connection speed we've got is the speed of light. And even the speed of light is too slow because the moon is very far away, so you won't have real time interaction.
Um, the moon isn't that far. I think that the lag wouldn't be terrible. Or maybe it would, I don't know.
How far is the moon from Earth if we're counting light speed? Okay, not that far. It's about 1.3 seconds. you won't have that
Yeah.
much of a delay.
That's bearable. I mean, it's only around 384,000 kilometers. That's not too bad. I mean, further than that would be a problem.
Just 1.3 light seconds.
Yeah, you can get around that.
Yeah, no, it's good enough for moving a robot around on the moon.
Yeah. Hey, Ron. How you doing?
Yeah, how are you doing? I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good. So yeah, I think the idea
Alright.
of a mentally operated computer interface for robotics is pretty good.
Well, with a Neuralink, I saw a guy the other day. He was feeding himself. He's a paraplegic, and he used a robot arm to feed himself. So he had a bowl in front of him, and the robot had a teaspoon, and he picked it up using his brain. So he
Okay,
was feeding himself.
that's pretty good. Well, here's the thing.
Yeah,
Ultimately,
everybody was smiling because it was such a success that he was able to feed himself using a robotic arm and his brain.
you see, at the end of the day, your fingers don't feel, your eyes don't see per se. It's all receptors. It's your brain that does the actual seeing, feeling, everything,
Yes.
right? So theoretically, not only can, if we understood the correct electrical impulses in the correct place, not only could you do things, you could even feel things
Yes.
even though you're not
Yeah.
actually
I had a
feeling
long
them.
conversation with AI about it. And yeah, so you could see things because it can manipulate your brainwave and you'll be able to see things,
So imagine if you were born blind
hear things.
and we could give you a pair of glasses that uses video sequencing and that ECG interface, and you're actually able to see.
Yeah, you'll be able to see in any light wave you want to see and look at.
There are applications right there. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
I like it. Unfortunately, my next invention is far less useful. It was developed in the 1960s. Um, Imagine if you really would like to own a cat and you want all the benefits of owning a cat without actually owning one. Well, this invention, developed in Japan in the 1960s, doesn't offer you any of that. It was a device designed for scaring rats and mice, but rats and mice aren't fooled by it. Essentially, all it does is meows every now and
Okay.
then. It is a device you plug into the wall and it will meow 10 times a minute. And the
What did
lights
it
are,
do?
yeah, it does
Okay.
nothing else. Just that.
Okay.
It meows at you. And you're
If it
like,
worked, then then it would have been a cool invention.
it doesn't work,
Especially if you had lots of rats, or
right? Apparently they just ignore it.
they
So,
probably can't hear it.
or because there's nothing to see or smell, they think it doesn't exist.
Mm. Well, I've tested it on my cats using speakers and stuff like that, and I can't let them. I can't get them to react to a dog that's barking or any noises coming from the speaker. So it
Okay.
doesn't seem like they can actually hear the speaker. They probably hear some odd noise, but they don't hear what we are hearing.
Well, I'll tell you an interesting fact, which maybe might explain part of it, but cats don't meow at each other. They don't. They meow at humans. because
Yeah.
they've come to realize that humans can't speak cat.
Mm.
So we're
Cats are
stupid.
completely different.
Yeah,
They see differently, they hear differently.
absolutely. But they also
Oh,
use a huge amount of body language and all kinds of other things, and they've realized that humans are stupid and therefore don't know what they're saying, so they meow at you. It's kind of the equivalent of going, "Thicko, I've just said an entire sentence to you. Are you paying attention?" And we're like,
mm,
"Oh, look at the cute kitty." So, yeah, they probably think we're pretty dumb.
yeah.
So, yeah, it doesn't work. It does nothing but meow at you, insofar. Now, the next one actually does work, but it's kind of stupid as well. But I can see why it works and why it's cool. Okay, so this is called the ostrich pillow. And essentially, it's a pillow that wraps around your head. It's got a very small opening at the front for your nose and mouth so you can breathe. But it's cushioned all around. It covers your eyes so you can sleep in comfort without anybody bothering you anywhere. And it does work.
Okay.
It will make you look like an absolute tit, but it works.
And it's currently not on sale.
It is. The company is all one word, Ostrich Pillow.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's gloriously bonkers. It's cushioning, it cuts out light, cuts out noise. I mean, I can think of a lot of times I would have been glad of one of those, throwing it out there.
So can I mention an
Yeah.
invention that also scare animals away? And
Okay.
that would be a scarecrow. I'm also not sure if it works.
They do work when they're made correctly. Now,
Crows are pretty smart.
they are, but you need to recall that the original scarecrows are not static. They are designed to move in the wind and make noise. And it's the movement and noise that puts the animals off.
Okay.
Just a standing statue doesn't do anything. It's got to be mobile. So at the very least, it will have very loose fitting cloth draping it so that it moves in the wind. It will look man-like because most animals, birds and everything, recognize that man means danger. Crows, however, generally are fairly clever and they are a lot more of a problem. So, yeah. Now, are you a James Bond fan? The movies.
I've seen it before, but I won't call myself a fan.
Okay, did you ever see The Spy Who Loved Me?
Oh, I can't remember it.
Okay, that was the one that came out in 1977, and in it, James Bond has got a Lotus Esprit, which is a submarine car. Now, obviously it was just a movie, and it was designed to be cool and exciting, and it never really worked. But in the movie it did. Okay, however, Rinspeed, which is a German car company, decided to see if they could make a real one. And they made what is known as a Scuba, a zero-emission electric sports car power supplied by rechargeable lithium-ion batteries that could dive to a depth of 10 meters and reach speeds of 3 kilometers an hour when fully submerged. It works.
It's very slow.
It is underwater, but on the other hand, it functions fully as an ordinary car with all the speeds and everything as an electric car when on land. It's just it can also go underwater.
And when did they try and make this, or did make it?
They did make it. They don't say when it came out, but it was inspired by the 1977 film.
They should try and do it again with today's technology.
Right? That's what I'm thinking. I mean, imagine if you can drive down to the beach and then go straight into the water and carry on going. I could see use to this.
So only people that want fancy cars will probably buy it.
Well,
Don't
I
you
mean,
think workers won't need something like that?
really, imagine if you drove down to the beach and charged 100 Rand for a spin around the harbour. I mean, who wouldn't want at least a go, right? I mean, I would.
A vehicle that can drive in water and on land would be super useful for lots of people.
Well, I do know for an absolute fact that the current aim in military vehicle technology, which they are working on, is I think they call it something like the tri-element vehicles, something like that. It's a vehicle that can fly, drive, and swim. Okay, so a vehicle that you can fly when you want to fly it, drive on the roads when you want to drive it, and use as a submarine when you need to. Or at least as a boat. And that is technology they are working very hard to achieve at the moment in a usable manner.
Underground spies probably already have that technology.
Well, possibly, but the trouble with secret technology is that it's secret and they won't share it with me. Because I would absolutely go for a vehicle like that. I mean, come on. Traffic jam, I'll just fly there. I could see that working for me. But as you can imagine, there are issues. Not the least of which is the cost of the fuel. Now, the next interesting one was very serious because at a time, and it seems to be coming back in, that the moustache was the most popular form of facial hair. And it was a very, very serious fashion statement. And indeed, around the 19th century, the handlebar moustache was very common. So in 1876, the American Virgil Gates took out a patent for a specialized moustache guard that will keep it clean and dry while you are eating and drinking. How well this worked, I'm not sure. It was made either of rubber or metal, and it was kept in place by two elastic cords slipped around the ears. It, however, did not prove very popular for reasons. But hey, he tried. You've got a moustache. Would you wear that?
Probably not.
No. It does make you look like an utter twit. But, you know, it does keep your moustache dry. Now, this next one is another one that falls into the category of just why. A bicycle with no seat, no pedals, and you use running to propel it. You sit in this sling, which looks damned uncomfortable, and then you run with this bike. And if you're thinking, why, when a bike works perfectly well as a bike? The answer is, I have no freaking clue. It looks stupid. It looks uncomfortable. Yeah. It was invented in a time when things like the Laufmaschine bike, or hobby horse, was invented by Baron Karl Drais 200 years ago. The bicycle had no chain or anything, no pedals. You basically just sit in this sling and dangle, which for a guy that does not look like the kind of thing I would want, it's light and it's space agey, and really it's as pointless as it's possible to get. But other than that, it's great and it does work. Okay. Nevertheless, the next invention is quite the opposite. It's equally as useless, but man, was it popular in its time. Take a guess, Bookie. Take a guess.
What time was it?
It came out around about the 1970s. It sold approximately, over 1 million of this toy. It is a toy. It was invented by Gary Dahl. No? Well, a pet rock.
Okay.
It is quite literally a rock. You don't have to feed it, look after it. It comes with its own bedding and a ventilated carrier, and it's like having a pet without actually having a pet.
You don't need to feed it, but you can probably love it.
I suppose you can, because it sold over 1 million. So clearly it was hugely popular. Why? I don't know.
Whoa.
But yeah, hugely successful invention that was a rock. The next one is another one which, again, I don't know, maybe you can give me good ideas. So, the German physical culture expert Josef Pilates. Yes, if you've ever done Pilates, which the rest of us annoying people refer to as pilots, he invented this. And while we know him for his incredibly popular exercise and training techniques, which still go on today, actually, he was the inventor and designer of a great many beds. And when he moved to America, he designed and patented one in 1930s, which was a V-shaped bed. He believed that traditional beds were not comfortable enough, and the new design would help keep the back straight and give more support to arms and legs. Unfortunately, the general public thought it was a load of shit, and nobody bought it. So was he right? Well, he was right about his Pilates. I don't know. The next invention, however, goes along with what we were talking about earlier, which is pretty cool if you need such a thing. And that is the cereal serving hat. It's essentially a hard hat like you would get on a work site with a digger attachment off the front to scoop up cereal and deposit in your bowl, and an attachment on the back where you insert your bottle of milk so that it will then pour it for you, and you operate it off these little joysticks like you would a proper digger on a building site. Why? For what? But if it makes any kind of sense in general, this same guy that invented this also invented the nose stylus for using your smartphone in the bath with your nose. So maybe that gives you an idea of the kind of thinking. For some reason, apparently, this device is not actually yet available for sale. One wonders why. Surely it would be so interesting and useful. Now, the next device is a genuine device that was hugely popular and utterly terrifying. And it was designed for people living in high-rise buildings. Okay. It was banned by the government. Invented around the 1930s, this is the baby cage. A special cage that you hang outside your window on the 10th story of your building and put your baby in so that they can get some fresh air. It was thought to be a good idea. It probably wasn't. And the government stepped in to say, listen, people. They were, however, tried out in places all over the world, especially New York and London. But as it turned out, the governments didn't approve, and actually quite a lot of parents had a negative reaction to it. Strangely, quite a lot of parents thought they were a brilliant idea. So basically, it's like a chicken wire cage that you hook to your windowsill and then put your baby in to get some sun and air. That's what it is. Don't try this at home, children. I'm just saying. Nevertheless, these are not the only really, really odd things people have invented. So, hold on. Once again, inactivity. There we go. Let's just activate. You see, people, if you don't put in comments, however strange they may be, everyone thinks that you don't exist. So, yeah, the baby cage. The idea was good. It was designed because it was a time when there was a widespread rise of tuberculosis. And it was believed that open air and ventilation was key in fighting the epidemic. They created a lot of open air schools for kids, and the baby cages went along with that idea. It was actually approved of and used by Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of the president, Teddy Roosevelt, and her firstborn was stuck in it for her morning naps. Apparently, when they were put in, if they cried, you should leave them there, according to doctors of the time. However, the neighborhood thought differently and threatened to go to the New York Society for Prevention of Cruelty Towards Children if it wasn't removed. Apparently, Roosevelt reported how she was shocked at the reaction of the neighbors, saying that she was being a modern mother and they were just being rude. Yeah, well, baby cages. Put your baby out the window on the 10th floor. The reason that they didn't take on in London was because they sort of got there around the time of World War II, and it was the Luftwaffe that ended the usage of baby cages. Thanks, Adolf. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, that's hilarious. The next interesting one, which again I think you might enjoy, Spooky, which in a way we've sort of got in the modern age. Now, it was developed in 1949, where obviously it was a lot bigger, heavier and bulkier. And it was a radio hat, a portable radio built into a pith helmet that would get you the local radio stations. And apparently it was hugely successful as well. Of course, nowadays we have better options, but in a way we still use exactly that. It was an invention by a chap called Victor Hoflich, who also invented, while in school, a machine to make paper Hawaiian leis in 1914. And his company by 1949 shipped millions of leis to Hawaii every year. And he developed all kinds of devices. Except what's interesting is his sold, including the radio hat. Bearing in mind, we're talking about a time where a radio would still use a vacuum tube. So it's not like you and your Walkman or your MP3 player. This was a fairly heavy deal and had an antennae and everything. But you could get it in 8 colors: lipstick red, tangerine, flamingo, canary yellow, chartreuse, blush pink, rose pink, and tan for the guys. Yeah. The radio hat. And yeah, it was popular. But you've got to admire his early ingenuity, which really and truly is quite impressive. Radios of the time were usually powered by AC mains. They used vacuum tubes that had a 6 or 12 volt filament supply that heated the cathode, and a 100 to a 300 volt anode supply. Technological advances for mobile radios were still working around the vacuum tubes. So the idea of a radio hat with an internal battery pack was like light years ahead of its time. And it worked. And it would last for up to 20 hours of play. So only AM, just so you know. But kind of wow. So yeah, radio hats. Would you wear one?
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
I mean, if you think about it, for its time, it was pretty damn impressive. Hey, Igor. And Sigma Flow. Awesome to see you both. Now, the next one is just stupid. And it's the kind of thing that, given that they were using cutthroat razors, okay, the old style Sweeney Todd razor that's just a blade, one big blade, I would not have allowed anybody near me with this. Just saying. This is the multiple shaving device. So, a device designed to shave lots of people at once, which essentially has the barber with his hand on a handle connected to like levers, and all of the people lined up in a row with blades in front of them. And as he moves his hand, it shaves all of them at once. If you could see the picture, the one guy looking at the camera looks freaking terrified. I'm just saying. So, yeah. I mean, what if you're with somebody a bit thinner than you and you lose half a cheek to this? I'm sorry. No. It didn't take on, in case you're wondering. So, like the moustache guard, no. The next interesting thing is a very, very serious device which not only worked, was used, and has spawned a modern catchphrase. Has any of you ever heard somebody say, hey, that guy's a dead ringer for Bob? Well, here is where it comes from. The safety coffin. So this was a problem that came up in a number of places for reasons of epidemic. You may not realize it, but the Black Death would cause you to fall into a deep coma where you would appear dead but would wake up from. Also, during the cholera epidemics, contagion was a terrible risk and a great fear, which led to very fast burials, which sometimes meant that they weren't checking too close if you were really dead because of that. So we have a number of times when burial pre-mortem happened. And in order to make sure that you might possibly be okay, you had a safety coffin. A coffin fitted with a mechanism to prevent staying down there. Basically, a coffin with a bell attachment that if you wake up panicking and start moving, it would ring the bell and we'd know to dig you up. Now, we do know that there have been graves excavated from around this time where there were claw marks inside the coffin, which showed that people were buried pre-mortem. So maybe this was a very, very important invention. There were a number of accounts of pre-mortem burial, and there was a list made by a Dr. Henry Jacques Garrigues, who said that out of every 200 coffins put underground in this country, the occupant of at least one of them is simply in some form of lethargic state, coma, and is buried alive. So this was quite a serious fear. So the favorite one was the bell on a string that was tied to the wrist of the deceased, that if they then moved would ring the bell. Hence the phrase dead ringer, because if you saw the person afterwards walking around, clearly he had recovered, been dug up and was now healthy again, he was the dead ringer, literally, of that person. And it's come into modern English that if you see someone that looks exactly like someone else, they are the dead ringer for that. There you go. So, safety coffins. Others had movable glass panes, which would allow you to break glass in case of being alive, and would allow a watchman to look in and see if you breathed. So, you know, great. Others included things like an air tube for fresh air, and one with a lock that had keys on the inside to allow you to unlock it and get out, and had a doorway to escape said coffin. He was in a mausoleum rather than buried, so he could then get out of his coffin. There was a German priest who suggested in 1798 that all coffins should have a tube inserted from which a cord would run to the church bells, that if an individual had been buried alive, they could draw attention to themselves ringing the bell. Very impractical, but led to the designs for coffins with signalling systems. Small trumpet-like tubes allowing you to call up and say, "Oi, I ain't gone yet." And the local priest could go to the gravesite and sniff to see if there was putrefaction, as there should be, or if he could hear cries of help, and then they could dig you up and rescue you. According to history, Dr. Adolf Gutsmuth was buried alive several times to demonstrate the safety coffin of his own design, which was connected to the surface by a pipe. The pipe had bells installed through which food and light could be provided until the person inside was let out. In 1822, he stayed underground for several hours and ate a meal of soup, beer and sausages delivered to him through the pipe. I can see the why. I'm glad we don't need them anymore. Because, yeah, imagine waking up buried. I'm not sure that would make me very happy. We don't know if any of these coffins actually saved anyone's life. And of course, if the signaling systems fail, yeah. While there are apparently no documented cases of people being saved by the safety coffin. Don't know if that's due to modern medicine or whatever, but hey, there you are. The next interesting one is the pedestrian safety net. Developed in the 1930s, known as a safety scoop, which was designed, they say, to bring pedestrian deaths to a permanent halt, which sounds great. For people who do jaywalking, and it's essentially a sort of cloth version that fitted to the front of the car, not unlike the front end of a bulldozer. And the idea was that it would catch anyone as you ran over them, rather than squashing them. Now, the first person killed in an automobile accident in 1896 was one Bridget Driscoll, and the 1930s saw the introduction of a very novel solution known as the safety scoop and car catcher. The device was designed to stop pedestrian death. Modern mechanics even covered it in 1931. It will literally sweep a fallen pedestrian before it, saving them from being crushed. I don't know about that. It looked like it was the kind of thing that would make everything even more dangerous. But hey, it worked like a bumper until you thought you needed it. You would then pull a lever and the catcher would pop out, allowing you to catch them. Yeah. And they had demonstrations of people getting caught in it and looking happy about it. Bearing in mind, in the 1930s, the speed of vehicles was not that fast. I don't think it would help today. I'm just saying. But there you go, a pedestrian catcher. For all of the reasons that you might want one. Practical? No. Innovative? Maybe. I don't know. Now, are there other things that might be better? Well, how about a wooden bathing suit? I've got people giggling behind me. They're listening in and having a good old laugh. But nevertheless, in 1929, they invented a wooden bathing suit. Now, timber comes in all shapes and sizes, and this particular place in Grey Harbour made huge amounts of different wooden items. And they came up with the idea of bathing suits made out of spruce. A spruce veneer type bathing suit. Now, I will say that this was at a time where bathing suits, especially for ladies, were more like full body clothing. And my God, the idea of seeing anything above the knee was unthinkable. So fashionable? No. Simple, cheap and easy to make? Yes. They thought they were fashionable and modern, and very much recyclable and DIY. And basically they were made by somebody who had some leftover veneer. Wooden bathing suits. practical, buoyant, will allow you to swim without drowning. I can't see them catching on then. I can't see them catching on now. They were ugly and they were wooden. But hey, in terms of fascinating inventions, they were. The next interesting thing was the anti-eating mask, a novel device designed to stop you from compulsive eating. Essentially, a metal head cage which is locked onto you with a grill over your mouth so you cannot eat. The idea was that the temptation to eat excessively is ever present, and this is a forced way to guarantee that even if stressed or compulsive, you can't eat and therefore will not get fat. It didn't take on at all. Nobody was interested in it, and if anything, it looked like, if you go back in history, the Scold's bridle, which essentially was a muzzle that was designed for women who nagged too much. So, yeah, I don't think that they were ever going to win with this. So, it was one of those things that the only way to remove it is with the key, or in an emergency, you could remove it by cutting the leather strap that holds it on. Yeah, it didn't take off. I'm just throwing it out there. Are you shocked?
No, I've seen some strange devices before.
So the next question I had, and which hopefully is far more interesting, was what were the greatest inventions in human history? The ones that really mattered, that really made a difference to human evolution, to everything.
Hand axe.
That is indeed the first one. The idea of not just a cutting tool, but one hafted that would do something. And the oldest one, fascinatingly, was found in Ethiopia, 2.6 million years old. I mean, right there. Now, calling it a human invention, it's so old that it predates Homo sapiens.
Yes.
Which is,
I think the first human species, Homo sapiens, were probably 100,000 years ago.
So, an amazing...
It's not the only human species. I mean,
well,
2 million years ago, that whoever made that hand axe was probably also some type of human species.
They were a proto-species. Australopithecus garthi, maybe, or Homo habilis, possibly. The species that eventually became the Homo line. So...
But they are humanoid-like creatures.
Oh, yes. They were the precursors. So absolutely humanoid, but not human quite as we know. But an amazing, amazing invention for its time. And I suppose, yeah, not a shock at all that it was one of the greatest. Well,
they could crack open nuts or chop something
and bones. Getting at marrow was a major thing. The more protein you can get, the more your body develops, including your brain. So the ability to get into things, to efficiently get extra wood for the fire and more, was absolutely massive.
Yeah, but fire was a good invention. It helped cooked meat, and we could digest it faster.
Well, funnily enough, the hand axe predates fire use,
Yeah,
which goes to show how amazing it was for its time. I mean, before we even were able to use fire, that was the one. So, yeah. I got something in my eye. I do apologize.
well, well, that was the invention that helped create all other inventions.
Exactly. But an amazing fact. So well spotted there, by the way. The next major invention, and yes, I think this is really the big one, agriculture. The idea of actually growing specific crops in an area repeatedly, that really had a major effect on human history. And only around about 12,000 years ago, really. So it goes to show that human development really has grown a lot very recently rather than long ago, if that makes sense. I have got a giant bite on my finger that is itchy. Buggery. There's serious mosquitoes going around at the moment, and yeah, I think they are prehistoric because they are not small, and apparently I'm tasty. Ha! I'm a snack. So yeah, agriculture comes in at the next major invention. Third major invention. Well, yes, it might have been older than that. They say that possibly as much as even 15,000 years ago. But one thing
I would
that...
probably say like 50,000 years ago.
No.
There's no evidence for it, but why would you not be planting things? You might not, obviously, it's not commercial farming. Just a plant that you plant now and you come back next year.
I think partly because there were a lot less people and a lot more available resources. So hunter-gathering would have been more effective than it would be if you tried it now. So the need was less. But the value and use, once developed, was more, if that makes sense. Also, it's arguable...
Well, once they settled and community started to grow, or civilization started to grow, then they had to start farming.
Well, the argument is that it was the development of agriculture that caused people to settle and grow.
Yeah.
So,
Because running after animals doesn't work. You're going to have to keep on the move because they're just going to get further and further away from you each day.
yes, kind of. And with agriculture, it's not just the growing of crops, but the keeping of animals, if that makes sense. Yes.
Yes.
The next one that had the greatest impact was the invention of... Take a guess.
The handbag. I don't know.
Writing. You weren't too far off. Handbags show up in all kinds of ancient things, and we don't know why. But yeah, writing. The ability to make note of anything. And maybe as much as 3,500 years BC, developed among the Sumer in Mesopotamia. But it didn't only develop the ability to communicate, but to record. So you're able to communicate not only over distance, but over time. So I could leave a message for my grandchildren. And that alone is not just a major development, it shows a change in thinking and therefore a change in philosophy, which because of that eventually comes along to the idea of artificial intelligence, the ability to create and pass on is one of the key things of intelligence. And if we can get artificial...
So do you think... Sorry.
I think...
But writing was created before handwriting.
You went all dim there and I heard none of that. Writing was before?
Do you think writing was created before handbags?
Oh, absolutely not. Handbags have been very, very big for centuries and centuries and centuries.
They used it to put their stash away.
Well, yes, I would think so.
They walked around a lot and they can't just carry it in their hands.
Well, here's a weird thought, okay, that you might not realize. Pockets were only invented in the last few hundred years.
Mm-hmm.
No clothing had pockets. It just wasn't how it was made. So, yes, you would either have a pouch on a belt or you would have a handbag.
The pockets are so useful.
Well, yes, absolutely. Now, but they were just...
pockets every day.
Yeah, but they never had them. Instead, you would have a bag until probably somebody who's fairly poor was like, I need to put this somewhere and I haven't got a bag. And they tucked their shirt in through their belt to make a fold and then thought, that was a damned clever idea. I'll sew one in. And out of that came pockets. But yeah, pockets are a fairly recent invention, believe it or not. Now, the next inventions are even stranger because they are inventions that were invented accidentally. So, yes, they weren't intended. Now, one of the most famous inventions, which is right up at the top of the list, you will never believe me, but it's true. Kellogg's cornflakes. Cornflakes were a mistake. So in 1894, John Harvey Kellogg was a superintendent for the Battle Creek Sanitarium in Michigan. And they were trying to find a wholesome vegetarian form of food to feed the patients, who were obviously difficult to feed. And his brother Will accidentally left boiled wheat sitting out one day, and it went all dry, stale and flaky. Now, not wanting to waste good food, he baked it instead and turned it into something with a satisfying crunch. And the patients loved it so much that they decided, hang on a minute, and they kept trying different grains until they came across the corn recipe for Kellogg's cornflakes. The patients loved that hugely. So they opened the Kellogg Company in 1906 to sell it to the public, and it took off, and it is sold to this day.
And you eat it with milk.
Yes, you do. Now, the next interesting one, superglue. Researcher Harry Coover, who worked for the Eastman Kodak Company, first attempted to use the substance to create plastic gun sights in World War II. But it was really annoying, and he threw it out as an idea because the damn stuff stuck to everything. However, in 1951, he started playing around with it again, this time to develop heat-resistant jet aeroplane canopies. But again, it was useless because it was far too sticky. And then he realized that it didn't require any heat or pressure to bond things together. And really, what it glued really, really well was his fingers together. And so he realized it was a brilliant way to use on the battlefield to close injuries. And so superglue was developed in order to be an instant medical use stitching on the battlefield. And that's why we have superglue today. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Now,
How do you make it?
I know it's made with cyanide.
Okay.
I forget exactly what, but yeah, it's made with cyanide, weirdly enough. It's a cyanophosphate, I think. I don't know a great deal about the science behind it. Now, the next interesting one was invented during World War II by an engineer, Richard James, who was trying to invent a way to stabilize important instruments on naval ships in rough seas. And he came across the idea of using springs, which didn't work very well, because what would happen is in the rough seas, they would go and that didn't stable bugger all. But then during his attempts to do it, one of the springs got knocked off the table by his elbow, and it's walked its way down to the floor where it recoiled itself and stood upright. He showed it to his wife, who said, "You could sell that to kids as a toy." And thus a slinky was born. And it was first sold to customers in Gimbel's department store in 1945, and within the first 90 minutes, over 400 slinkies were sold. There you go. So, interesting. Now, the next invention comes with a question. What is the connection between a dog and Velcro? Well, if it wasn't for dogs, there would be no Velcro. So George de Mestral, a Swiss electrical engineer, noticed after taking his dog for a walk in the woods that a large number of cockleburs, their little plant seeds with spiky things on, were stuck to his dog's fur. When he returned home, he examined the burrs under a microscope, discovering that they are actually not just spiky things on the seeds, but they had tiny hooks that allowed them easily to attach to the loops in fabric and loops in fur, but they were springy and you could pull them off again and stick them back on again and pull them off again. And he did a bit of experimentation and eventually found that nylon could be used to make these things, and thus developed Velcro. The fashion industry hated it However, in the 1960s, NASA started using it to secure loose items in zero-gravity environments. And this then moved into sporting goods and footwear, and finally into fashion, and it took off. Ta-da! The next one, dynamite. Yes, it was made by mistake. Ah, dear. So, Alfred Nobel, who later established the prestigious Nobel Peace Prize, was working with the substance, nitroglycerin, and dropped a vial of it on the floor. And it smashed, but it fell into a pile of sawdust, which stabilized it so it didn't explode. Because they knew in the 1860s nitroglycerin was very, very explosive, but unstable. So he then realized you could use sawdust to stabilize the nitroglycerin so that mixed in with a kind of silica glue, you could create something that would only go bang initially if you lit it. If you leave it too long, it starts to sweat and goes back to its original state of going bang anytime. But initially, it was much, much safer. And so dynamite was invented by the inventor of the Nobel Peace Prize.
I thought dynamite came from the Chinese.
Explosive crackers, but they were not made with nitroglycerin.
I mean, gunpowder. Gunpowder was made from the
Yes,
Chinese.
the Chinese invented gunpowder, but Nobel invented a way to stabilize trinitrotoluene.
TNT.
Yes, and trinitroglycerin, which if you take in its raw state and you drop it on the ground, it goes bang. And the whole point was it didn't go bang. And that was the important bit.
Yeah.
Now the next one.
I saw a massive building explode the other day.
Oh yeah.
Apparently it was caused by flour.
Yes, flour is deadly. That's why grain silos are made the way they are. They're designed to redirect explosion. Grain, flour, all of that stuff is prone to explosion.
That whole building blew up.
Yes,
It was gone.
bread is deadly. You didn't know that?
Oh, now I did. After seeing that, and I was wondering, was that an attack? Was it a terrorist attack?
No,
What
it's
happened there?
really, really
Yeah.
dangerous,
Wow.
actually. Yeah. Well, the next invention is one that is hard to talk about, even though it was a mistake. It was developed initially as a medicine to treat angina, a heart condition that can lead to heart attacks and all sorts of things. But it turns out this particular medicine was inefficient and therefore no good. However, what it did do was have a very consistent alternative reaction. And I am referring, of course, to Viagra. Yes, it was a heart medication. But as it turns out, it has nothing to do with hearts or love, but plenty of other things. And it turned out to be a goldmine for medicine anyway. So it may have been a disappointment to those who developed it for heart medication, but it wasn't a disappointment for millions of other men world over.
Okay. Do
But
people still use that stuff?
you're joking, right? It's one of the world's biggest sold pills.
Okay, so it's legal.
It's absolutely effective. It is you, and in fact, it's one of the safest forms of assistance that you can get. It doesn't affect you in other ways, in negative ways, and it doesn't really interact with other medication either.
Okay. And for your reproductive abilities?
Unfortunately, your reproductive abilities have nothing to do with your ability to perform, and everything to do with your sperm count, which is not affected by Viagra, I'm afraid. So you can manage the deed, if not the effect.
But doesn't other things also help? If they're legal? Cocaine, ecstasy.
I don't actually know. I've heard stories, but I don't know for sure. And at least this is over the counter and legal. Whereas walking into your doctor and saying, listen, I need a couple of lines, probably won't go down terribly well.
Yeah. Cocaine used to be legal and used to be in Coca-Cola.
That is true. And did you know Coca-Cola was also originally green?
No, no, I don't know that.
Yeah, it was bright green. So, yeah, take it as it comes. Coca-Cola with cacao in it was green.
This has been an awesome drink back in the day.
It must have really rocked. It was also originally a medicine.
Oh,
Yeah, it was designed as a general tonic and cure-all.
okay. It gets your heart pumping.
Well, it did if it had
Makes you feel
cocaine in it.
stronger.
I mean, let's face it. Have a drink of this. How do you feel? I feel good.
Awesome.
And of course, after 2 or 3 bottles, you're almost guaranteed that there will be a repeat custom.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
throwing it
it's
out
so
there.
addictive.
Absolutely. Now, the next one is interesting. I don't know if it counts as a good invention. It wasn't effective in the field for which it was supposed to be used, but it sold a hell of a lot. So during World War II, James Wright, an engineer working for the US War Production Board, was attempting to make a cheap alternative for synthetic rubber. And he took silicone oil and added boric acid, which created a substance that could bounce better than rubber and stretch better than rubber. But the government wasn't interested in the material because it didn't do what they wanted. So it was shelved. But a businessman named Peter Hodgson later on noticed how entertaining it was at a party when he heard about it and made a bit to see. And he renamed the substance Silly Putty and sold it as a children's toy and made a fortune.
Yeah.
So, great. Apparently it worked. There you go. The next one is in the same vein and is sold till today all over the world. And in fact, I used to know somebody who went through this at a huge rate when she was working with little children in a Montessori school, and so she learned how to make it because she just went through it. Now, the initial one was invented as a cleaning product because back in the day before World War II, most homes were heated using coal, and this left terrible soot deposits throughout the house, which obviously were hell to clean up. So Play-Doh was invented to clean things. Now, after the war, natural gas became a common heat source, so the invention of Noah and Joseph McVicker became useless. But Kutol's products on the brink of bankruptcy left them panicking, and in the 1950s, Joseph discovered that his sister, who was a school teacher, was giving the material to her students to use as modeling clay. And it was, of course, reusable modeling clay because it didn't go hard. And so he renamed it and flogged it to nurseries and schools and re-established their company as Rainbow Crafts, and they sold it as Play-Doh, and it was originally offered only in off-white colour, but the colours were then introduced and it took off, and to this day. The very reason that it started is the very reason it still goes. Now, the next one is a weird one, and I didn't know this one and was quite surprised. Post-it notes. They were attempting in 1968 at the company 3M, which we know is one of the biggest glue companies in the world. An employer by the name of Spencer Silver was trying to develop a super strong adhesive for the manufacture of aeroplanes, and instead created a weak pressure sensitive adhesive called acrylate copolymer microspheres. But it could be reused and left no residue behind. Now, they were then trying to figure a profitable use for the substance and couldn't think of one. But then one day a fellow engineer said, you know what? I'm a singer in my church choir and my bookmarks keep falling out and I lose my place. But I bet that would work to keep the paper in my book and it didn't damage the book. So they gave them out as free samples, and 90% of all people that got them came back and bought more. Now, why yellow paper, the known colour? Also unintentional. It was scrap paper that Nicholson's team borrowed from the lab next door that happened to be yellow. And when they ran out of scrap paper, they just ordered more of it, and it was all yellow scrap paper. So it just became yellow. Now, here's one for you. And if you were ever a kid in Africa, this was the greatest thing in summer. Invented by an 11-year-old in 1905, this invention came to be when he forgot a powder-flavoured soda water mixture on the porch one evening with a stir stick in it. And the weather was very cold, below freezing, and the mixture froze onto the stick. And thus the popsicle was invented. In 1922, when he was much older, he brought these things to the local fireman's ball, where they were an enormous hit. Realizing the commercial potential, he applied for the patent in 1924 and called it the Epsicle Ice Pop. But he needed to sell his patent when he ran into money troubles, and he sold it to the Popsicle Corporation, which absolutely didn't do popsicles, and in fact is owned by Unilever, but it became known as a popsicle, not an epsicle. There you go. I did not know that. The ice cream cone, used as far back as the late 1800s. There were a lot of street vendors where the competition was very fierce, and the defining difference came down to more than just flavors, but how you served the ice cream. Now, the problem was there wasn't a lot of recyclable stuff at the time, which was problematic. Common materials would be either metal, glass, or paper. But metal and glass, you need it back and people wanted to buy and walk on. Paper was in extreme short supply because of the war. So he thought, I got a great idea and I've run out of paper cups to serve it in, but this guy over from me is making waffle pastry. So he says to the guy, give me some of those waffles, but wrap them into a cone. And then he could serve his ice cream in that, which you could take away and then eat the ice cream's container as well. And that's how we got cones. How about that?
It's not too bad.
Pretty cool. Now the next one is really, really, really important, though it was also a mistake. Pain. Surgery prior to the 1800s generally was badly treated. But two young students discovered that you could go to a thing called laughing parties, where nitrous oxide was inhaled because it made everybody laugh, because it was fun and entertaining. But they realized that it also affected your perception of pain and would stop you feeling it. And so they adopted it for use for dental purposes and minor surgeries, and it was hugely effective. And thus you got inhaled anesthesia. Now, believe it or not, the next one will blow your mind just a little. Did you know that penicillin was invented by mistake? So, Sir Alexander Fleming in 1928 was a bit careless, and he happened to go on vacation, leaving lying around a petri dish containing Staphylococcus. Bad idea generally. But when he got back, it developed a layer of mold that stopped it from growing any further. It took 13 years of medical treatment to figure out all the bits. But eventually, they discovered a comparable mold that grew rapidly, and they synthetically developed it into the first penicillin to stop infections in people. So yeah, it was a mistake. The next one will blow your mind. Chocolate chip cookies. How could it be an accident? Well, in Massachusetts, where they were enveloped, there was a lady by the name of Ruth. In the 1930s, she had a real reputation for her cooking, and she was making some chocolate butter drop cookies. but she was out of Baker's chocolate. So she didn't have anything to mix into the mixture so you would get a solid chocolate cookie. So she said, I know, and she chopped up a bar of ordinary chocolate and threw it into the cookies as lumps, expecting that the chocolate chips would melt into the dough as they cooked. But they didn't. Instead, retaining their shape, making a soft, gooey dough that was well baked with nice chocolate bits in as well, and hence chocolate chip cookies were invented by mistake. And they were such a hit that she made an agreement with Andrew Nestle from the Nestle company for a lifetime supply of chocolate exchange for the recipe, which she wrote out on a bar's label and gave to him. But it worked. It worked really well.
Yeah.
Next one.
Yeah. I love chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, yeah. Proper chocolate chip cookies are amazing. Well, here's another thing that I have a great weakness for that was a mistake. In 1853, George Crumb, a chef at the Moon Lake Lodge in Saratoga Springs, New York, served chips to a customer who complained they were too thick. So he made another batch of chips and they were thinner, and the customer complained again. So losing his shit and thinking, really, I'll show you irritation, he cut the chips so thin that they couldn't be eaten with a fork, over-salted them, and cooked them hard. The customer loved them, and the potato chip was invented. How about that? So there you go. It's possible to do amazing things. But that is not all. There is more. And this will lead on for the next live. Because when it comes to discoveries and inventions, there are many that are interesting, including vampire graves and more. Pits of bones, the oldest murder scene ever. And we will get into all of these in the next live. So join me then for more weird, wonderful, interesting, strange, and possibly creepy at times things that were discovered, invented, or just turned up and nobody understands. Been great to have you.
Wonderful.
And I will see you tomorrow for more Weird and Wonderful. Have a fantastic evening. Sleep deep, sleep sweet, sleep well. Because fortunately, the next batch of things are all in the past.
Okay, cool. Cheers. Have a good night.
You too.